Good morning, everyone. So today we'll be talking about another lesson, a new lesson on starting with Unit 2, the crucial structure of globalization. So before that, last week we talked about globalization and the economy. So for the whole also of Unit 1, we talked about globalization as a whole and its defining characteristics. So those were the easy attributes or characteristics of globalization. So beginning Unit 2, we will be talking about the more crucial structure of globalization. And to begin with, we have for our Unit 2, Lesson 1, we have the globally interconnected world of states. So why do we call or how do we define globalization as being interconnected? So we have a quote here by Chief Shattle. Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together, and all things connect. So what do we mean by this striking quote? So I picked this quote because it really tells a lot about us humans from before, in the past, and humans as of today. So whatever we do, it affects another living creature, or it affects our environment. So whatever we do have a lot of consequences, may it be good or bad. So a lot of us humans, even though we are far apart from each other, or we have different worlds existing, we are from different countries and cultures, we are connected to each other. And then globalization is there to prove us that we are one community. So it says that globalization is a primary vehicle for political organizing. How do we say that? So to define organizing, it is a method assisting individuals in forming the social movements and political parties that are needed to run campaigns and gain influence. So when it comes to political organizing, it has a lot of purposes depending on the ones instigating its organizing. So we will learn all about it as the lesson progresses. We also have here some awesome words to define to develop a more critical understanding of our lesson for today. So first we have the state versus the nation. So what is a state and what is a nation? First we have the state. So it says here that the state, it is a form of human association distinguished from other social groups by its purpose, the establishment of order and security, its methods, the laws and their enforcement, its territory, the area of jurisdiction or geographic boundaries, and finally, by its sovereignty. This is according to the editors of Encyclopedia Britannica. Simply put, a state is like a political unit that has sovereignty or liberty over a particular piece of land or geographical location. And by sovereignty, we mean that or refer to a territory's highest jurisdiction. So in every society, jurisdiction is given to the individual, entity, or agency with supreme power over the other persons. So in order to make a rule or amend one that already exists. So a state is a group of people given the highest jurisdiction or sovereignty over a piece of land or a geographical location. So don't forget that is what a state means. On the other hand, we have nation. So it is defined as it is a large group of people linked by a similar culture, language, and history. So a nation by far is like a large group of people who are linked by their similar culture, language, and history. So members of some nations share the same ethnicity, while others have differing ethnicity. So for example, in South Korea, almost everyone in South Korea is Korean, right? And then when we look at the United States, they are culturally racially diverse. and they are consisting of ethnically diverse groups of people. So also from the United Kingdom and Australia, and for Singapore, for instance, these are some of the countries that are ethnically or racially diverse. So that is a nation. So sharing the same culture, language, history, and heritage. Another word to define, we have the nation states. So according to Brian Dwignan in 2020, it is a territorially bounded sovereign polity or a state that is ruled in the name of a community of citizens who identify themselves as a nation. So basically, it is a state that parang rules over a single nation. So many political scientists specialized in understanding how nation-state works internally and how they interact with one another. So because the nation-state dominates so much political discourse, so that is why a lot of study is being focused on nation-states. So again, a nation-state is a state that rules over a single nation. So when we go back to the definition of state and the nation, we would also understand automatically what a nation-state means. So basically, in nation states, we have a group of people having sovereignty over a piece of land that shares the same culture, language, and history. So that is what we mean when we say nation states. And then we have another word, which is the New World Order. So it is a political situation in which the world's countries are no longer divided over their support over the United States or the Soviet Union, but instead collaborates to solve international problems. So this is by the Cambridge University. So this can also be defined as the post-Cold War organization of power in which nations, they tend to cooperate rather than foster conflict. So after the Cold War, this is the situation wherein the states collaborate and work together rather than to fight internally. So this is because before, United States and the Soviet Union or Russia were seen as the two most powerful nations or countries in the world. So parang nahahati doon yung conflicts or yung favor nung iba pang mga countries. So that is the New World Order. Another one is that we will also be talking about the Cold War, and from here on, we will be talking about why we think that globalization has formed an interconnected world of states. So we begin with the story of Cold War. So the Cold War, why do we call this the Cold War? So it was a post-World War II political rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union or Russia, as well as their respective allies. So both sides were terrified of battling each other directly. That is why it was termed as the Cold War, because walang actual na war na nangyayari, but there is internal thought or conflict na anytime may war, may actual war na mangyayari. So how is that? Nuclear missiles have the potential to ruin anything and could therefore turn into a hot fight. So nuclear powers nuclear weapons were always at bay, and other weapons were also at bay anytime na they were ready to fight an actual war or battle. So as a result, both sides fought each other in a roundabout way. So parang silent lang, wala talagang war na naganap. But they were always conflicting. That is why both parties, the US and Russia, were always getting ready or were always ready for a war. So to further define globalization of today, we have Greg Calhoun, a sociologist, stated that globalization has produced innumerable paths across state borders with an unevenly disproportionate benefit. So he further argued that reconfiguration of globalization has essentially reshaped the roles and functions of those states. So these also give way to the following new roles. So we will be defining 5 roles of globalization onwards. So what Craig means of unevenly disproportionate benefit is that another end comparably gets more while the other end gets less. This is like a rich country is getting more out of something, and while the poorer countries gets lesser of that something. So we will further understand this as we go onwards. These are the sets of new roles of globalization as of today. Then we have our first role. It is the world of economic interdependence. So what do we mean by globalization as a world of economic interdependence? So in the 1950s to 1999, globalization was understood almost the same with global free market. It goes along with capitalism and the phenomenon of transnational enterprise. As a result, there is a parang disparity or difference in the ease in which capital can circulate and the ease with which imported goods can enter virtually any country on the planet. So, working conditions, therefore, is of their respective citizens struggled from their homemade products and commodities. So this is the point or the time when globalization actually started booming. So a lot of people or a lot of products or produce can enter and be sold at any states or nation. Remember how we defined neoliberal ways in economics, doing business with little intervention from the government. So, non-liberalism principle elaborated that fundamental option among non-significant nations was to conform and follow global free market principles. Or else, if these nations do not conform, they will be risking its people and also they will be left behind in terms of progress and development. So they were left with no other choice but to conform or to agree with the other nations, especially the strong nations like the US, China, Russia, France, and United Kingdom. This phenomenon is termed or coined as the golden straitjacket phenomenon by Thomas Friedman. So it is the direction of a nation or state in which they are forced into policies significantly preferred for them as imposed by globalization so that the flow of money and wealth may favor the rich. Friedman also said that the more a country tries to wear that straitjacket tighter, the more gold it can produce. But also disagreeingly, he said that most of the money or the wealth that is done through these deals are parang mas napupunta doon sa mga rich countries than on the poorer countries. So, the golden straitjacket is a conformity pag-agree ng mga ibang mga countries, especially the poorer ones, to the economic policies that were imposed by richer countries. So the golden straitjacket phenomenon was made possible because of the electronic herd. By electronic herd, we mean that this is the democratization of finance, technology, and information media. Finance and mass media were already being used by the public to favor or in favor of their own interest, may it be political or economical. So the interest of trading partners and external stakeholders will always be over and above the interest of the citizens. So no matter how a country tries to persuade another country that when dealing with business with them, they will gain more, in actual, that country will always gain more and will always prioritize gaining profit over the interest or the well-being of their citizens. So an author, Barajas Duran, pointed out actually that laissez-faire are neoliberal ideas whose aim is to ensure that the wealthy countries keep influence of the riches of the developing world. So On the other hand, human labor is an inherent part of the weakness of globalization. So there was an issue with, example, the dislocated workers' purchasing prices and the steady price in their living conditions in developing market areas and the rock bottom employment. So there are actually some countries or nations that their laborers are getting low wages, and also in that cities or countries where they live in, the living cost had also become higher. So parang yung ano nila, wages or yung sweldo nila is not sufficient to pay for their bills. That is why there is a huge disparity or parang problems when it comes to human labor in the age of globalization. I don't know if you've already heard of this, but there is a great notion that in China they have a cheap labor. So that is why most of the things most of the things that we have today are made in China. So let's take a look at this. So while they say that China's labor is less expensive than that of the United States and the other countries, it is still more expensive than that of the many other countries. China's average labor cost in 2016 was $4.99 per hour compared to $3.82 and 2.38 for its two main competitors, the Mexico and Vietnam. So when we look at this, China's labor is not really cheap. So so why is China's labor comparably cheap than that of the US? So this is actually because the Chinese government, they have invested in their labor force's education, resulting into parang mas educated or edukado na mga laborers or trabahante. And they have also invested in their technologies too. And countries who have actually the cheapest labor are those countries from Venezuela, Guinea-Bissau, and Malawi. So those were the actual countries who actually have cheaper labor than in China. So in turn, we have the second role of globalization. We have the rise of the European Union. So what is the European Union? I'm sure you've heard of this already. So it is an international body that governs economic, social, and security policies for 27 European countries. So initially, it is exclusive to Western Europe, and the EU gradually expanded rapidly into Central and Eastern Europe in the early 21st century. So, the union's purpose is to promote peace, establish a unified economic and monetary system, to promote inclusion, and to combat discrimination, of course, also to break down barriers to trade and their borders. And the EU, it also encourages technological and scientific developments, champion environmental protection, and among others, promote goals like a competitive global market and social progress. So they are actually very, very open to innovation. So they are also open to science and open to the world. And there's one of their main policy goals are research and innovation. We have four tenets of the European Union. So the first one, we have the European Council. So every member state's leader meet with the European Commission's president on a regular basis to prepare, stimulate, and organize the European Union policies and activities. So these gatherings are also known as the European Summits. The European Council, this is the council that discusses or meets on crucial issues on which they are yet to reach a consensus. So the sessions are presided over by the President of the European Council, and the European Council is made up of the heads of state or the governments of all EU countries, or the president of the countries or the states that are the members of the EU. Another one is the European Commission. So it is the EU's cornerstone and it is responsible for proposing laws based on the treaties, carrying out council decision and overseeing the enforcement of current regulations, ensuring that member states follow the European Union's law. Then, in the European Commission, the President of the Commission is nominated by the member states or nung mga presidente ng mga countries na kasapi sa EU. And they also allocate the different commissioner posts. So they are assigned responsibility for specific policy areas by their president. So the political leadership of the Commission is made up of the 27 European commissioners, one from each EU country. So each person, therefore, they are parang in charge of a particular policy area. So they are meant to represent the needs of the European Union and not of their own. So they have a 5-year contract each. Next tenet of the European Union, we have the Council. So it is also called the Council of Ministers. So it serves as the governments of the member states. It is a forum for national ministers from each country to enact legislation, and it is a co-legislator with the European Parliament, where the two bodies collaborate to pass EU legislation. So they make the laws and they pass the laws that they have discussed or will serve the purpose of their organization. So it is made up of the ministers for foreign affairs of each member states or parang yung mga minister ng foreign affairs ng every country is what makes up the council. So the committee meets at ministerial level once a year, and then at the deputies level or the permanent representative to the Council of Europe, and at the deputies level weekly. The last tenet, we have the European Parliament. So the European Parliament, it is one of the European Union's 3 governing bodies. So it adopts European legislation with the Council of the European Union. So usually on the recommendation of the European Commission. So that is on the 4 tenets of the European Union. We have the European Council, the European Commission, the Council, and the European Parliament. So, as observed by some scholars, the European Union daw, it is a concrete manifestation of strength from a state. So, it empowers the member states to protect and create a project of their own interest into an international arena. So, the European Union, it became a vehicle to some member states to rehabilitate themselves from the devastations conquered to them during the World War II. Some of the member states can help air out their parang mga issues that are on the national level and bring it to the international public so that they are given much more attention, and other countries will also help in parang contributing to these issues or problems. So, the European Union is a good manifestation of a strength of an organization. So, this is particular lamang sa most countries in the Europe, since among the third role of the globalization, we have the international law and the universal principles. We will start with talking about the UN or the United Nations. So what is the United Nations? So it is an international organization established in 1945 by 51 countries to preserve international peace and security. So it establishes friendly ties among nations and promotes social change, decent living conditions, and human rights. And the organization will take action on a wide range of issues and offer a forum for its 193 member states to share their opinions through the General Assembly. So the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, and the other bodies and commissions, thanks to its special international character and the powers vested in its founding charter. So the UNSA, another very good example of an international government that serves a lot of purposes. So another fact is the Philippines were actually one of the 51 founding members of the United Nations in 1945. So the United Nations assists and helps the Philippine government in achieving its critical growth, peace building, and humanitarian goals. The UN has four main purposes. Number one is to keep peace throughout the world, to keep a harmonious world. Number two is to develop friendly relations among nations. Number four is to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems because more heads are better than one. And then the fourth one is to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations to achieve these goals. So the UN has they have a lot of benefits to the world, or they have done a lot of very, very helpful things to the people from a lot of countries. Those things comprises of providing food for the hungry people and then assisting refugees. They also authorizes international peacekeeping missions in countries that are in conflict. Also, they are also working on climate change. They also help assist countries with their elections every time they have their elections. They also provide vaccinations for children in the world. They also help women on their maternal health efforts. They protect human rights, of course. So these are one of the many things that the UN or the United Nations are helping the world with. Although the UN is very helpful to the world, hindi mawawala na there are also parang bad things that is going on in an organization. So an example of that is the cholera outbreak in Haiti. So peacekeepers from the UN who had been sent to the region after an earthquake earlier that year, the pollution contaminated Haiti's main harbor, so sickening hundreds of thousands and killing at least 10,000 people. Soon after, the world was hit by a cholera outbreak linked to a sewage spill at a United Nations base. So after that 2010 earthquake, the UN-led Nepali aid workers were blamed for spreading cholera throughout Haiti. So more than 10,000 people died during that outbreak. The UN was blamed on how the cholera outbreak began. So while any organization has weaknesses and deficiencies, of course, most foreign leaders and scholars believe that the United Nations still continues to play an important role in ensuring global security and growth. Parang there are a few lapses or there are a few problems, but the UN still stands as one of the very helpful organizations to the world. That is believed by most scholars and foreign leaders. Still on international policy and laws, we have here another organization that was formed. It is called the International Criminal Court, and it is an international tribunal and intergovernmental body based in The Hague in Netherlands. So what does the ICC do? Given that justice is necessary condition for long-term stability and harmony. So the international justice will help the post-conflict countries achieve long-term security, prosperity, and equitable growth. So these elements are foundational for building a future free of violence. So the ICC solely exists for that purpose. Moreover, the ICC investigates and, where appropriate, prosecutes people accused of the world's most serious offenses, for example, terrorism, war crimes, crime against humanity, and violence. So the court is actually taking part in a worldwide campaign to end also corruption, and through that, the international criminal justice. And the ICC also hopes to keep those responsible for their actions accountable and help each other prevent such offenses from occurring in the future. Another organization that sprung during the rise of globalization is the NATO. So what is the NATO? So it is termed as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and is also known as the North Atlantic Alliance. So it is a joint alliance made up of 30 European and North American nations. So what is its priority? So during the Cold War, it was in a joint defense and security of its members from the Soviet Union or the Russian attacks. So many new security challenges arise as a result of the fall of the Soviet Union and the proliferation of non-state entities posing a danger to the international security as a whole. So the NATO's primary and long-term goal is to protect all of its members' rights and stability by political and military means. The alliance's core value is collective defense, which fosters a sense of unity and cooperation among its members. The NATO is more focused on the political and military aspects of organizing. Compared to the UN and ICC, mas prominent ang military organizing in the NATO. So according to authors, relying on national government to handle global issues is creating a world government that is undesirable and infeasible. A government that is a threat to individual liberty. So, parang mas nagre-rely na daw tayo on the national government instead of getting things done on our own. So, the state starts to participate in the pattern of accountability among nations, not only in economic advantage, but more so of moral credibility for a country's competitiveness. So, there are also a lot of benefits and disadvantages when it comes to political and economical organizing. So, that is up to you and to us, to a lot of people to decide whether they are being helpful or not. So, for my opinion, it is still helpful these days. Yun nga lang, hindi talaga maiwasan that there will be issues na mamimiss or parang mas magdadagdag pa ng problema instead of being solved. So that is, failure is a given. So that is up to us how we take failure. So, are we going to improve or not? Are we going to listen to other people or not? So, that's always up to us to decide. For the fourth role, we have transnational activism. What do we mean by transnational activism? So, transnational activism, so it is a policy or action using vigorous means or campaigning to bring about the political or social change extending or operating across national borders. So, it is activism na brought out sa international level. So, this kind of advocacy started in the 19th century with the campaign against slavery, foot-binding practices in China, and for women's voting rights. So, before, hindi pa nare-recognize yung maraming bagay. That is when transnational activism started. So according to Keck and Sikink in 1998, they argued that a state can recognize legitimacy of an international interventions and changes on its country's behavior in response to an international pressure, especially with regards to human rights and fundamental freedoms. So, a state they will be pressured to take action, especially kung sinasabi na ng ibang countries na, uy, ano nang nangyayari dyan? If a lot of countries are also, their interests were picked, that is when a particular country or a state starts to take action on inside their country whenever there are particular issues or problems that piques the interest of the global public. So, very, very recent pa lang, we have the issue of the Myanmar coup. So, and then, I have here a news clipping. This is the title goes as the UN calls for reversal of the Myanmar coup and condemns violence. So the article says that the UN Security Council unanimously called for the reversal of the military coup in Myanmar on strongly condemning the violence against peaceful protesters and calling for utmost restraint by the military. So the Myanmar coup has been going on earlier this year, and so I see a lot of news regarding the Myanmar coup. So I don't know what are your views on this, but according to this article, it says that the UN is starting to has already started to take action, and if you've seen the news, it's actually very gruesome and parang nakakaawa with regards to what's happening to their government, especially to their citizen. And how it started with violence, and as of today, it's still going on with violence. So it's actually up for the people outside of Myanmar also, if are we going to help or what are we going to do. So I don't know. I'll also be asking you what are your views towards the Myanmar coup, the ongoing Myanmar coup. So this question, comment it down on the Facebook post that I will be attaching this video on. So what are your thoughts about the Myanmar coup? Moreover, transnational advocacy movements uses network partners like Facebook and Twitter as a tool to assess certain policies and negotiations. So before, parang it's hard to get public opinion because we do not have the internet. So today, the elite in politics and the ordinary citizens everywhere, we are already using these new mass media tools. So to navigate and renegotiate our relationship in this global age, we also develop it into a new sphere of interactions and communications. So it is very, very easy to communicate our thoughts to the government. Are we agreeing to them? Do we have other problems or issues arising on our community, especially on the local ones? So it is easy to air out whatever concerns we have to our government or to our nation or state in today's age, the global age. For the last role, we have communication networks, news media, and the states. So globalization carried with it the varied forms of new digital media and networks. So according to Manuel Castos, he explained that there is in globalization the so-called network society. So globalization, it created a new era of political interaction, identity, and belongingness. It is very, very easy to express oneself in today's era. So while all these technology and advances also occurs or is happening, there is an undeniable surge of also of problems. One of those is the cyber threats. So what do we mean by cyber threats? It is a malicious act that aims to damage data, steal data, or otherwise disrupt digital life. So computer viruses, data hacks, and denial of service attacks are example of cyber threats. So if you're not familiar of DOS or denial of service, it prevents a user or a host connected to a network to not use a particular app or a particular site. That is what we may mean by denial of service. And then from infrastructural infiltrations and data breaches to spear phishing and brute force, there has also been a lot of concern about it. So when it comes to finding a target, it is very, very easy. Online threats come in all shapes and sizes, and they don't discriminate between business and individuals, regardless regardless of who you are or what you do. You are very, very prone to cyber threat. You are still prone to threats. So I have here another news clipping. This is about the malicious tagging that is happening today in the Philippines. So this is from CNN. It reads, DOJ, the Facebook takes down page behind malicious tagging scam. So I don't know if you've experienced this, but I haven't, because my Facebook settings is very tight and I like to keep it private. That's why not a lot of people can tag me except my friends. So many Filipino internet users have expressed their concerns with the widespread malicious tagging on the social media site in Facebook na. So this leads to a post featuring what appears to be an adult video. So what actually happens is that some people will tag you on a post that is parang related to porn. Then it will redirect you to a website that will prompt you to download something to your phone or your computer, and then that something that you will download is actually a virus that will try to get your data or whatsoever. Or it will prompt you to enter your personal information, especially your banking information. So never click those things. Very crucial pa naman yung mga private information, especially if they try to prompt you to enter your social media passwords. So they can also do that. They can also hack your other accounts. So in this sense, dahil nga maraming mga cyber threats that are in social media, a state or a country should be strong enough and effective in terms of dealing with these problems brought about by media globalization. So each countries must rethink their advances and find ways to compete and keep up with the other countries. So in the Global Innovation Index in 2020, the Philippines is ranked as the 50th out of 131 economies. So the Global Innovation Index is an annual ranking of countries base sa innovation potential and performance nila. So not bad for the Philippines, right? So we actually have a potential to innovate ourselves in terms of economy, politics, and technology. So, parang konting push lang talaga for the Philippines, and we can also keep up with the rest of the world. The social media age also has come from where ambassadors from many countries can now take public diplomacy by maintaining Facebook groups, Twitter feeds, and in other social media platforms. That is according to Coleman and Blumler in 2009. So, we have here Joe Biden from Facebook. He has a Facebook account and I follow him. We also have an example here, Vico Soto. He has a Twitter account. And lately, if you are fond of TikTok, I am fond of TikTok. So, I know I've encountered this U.S. Senator. His name is John Ossoff. He has a TikTok account. So, a lot of U.S. citizens favors him or expresses joy in him having a TikTok account. So in those platforms, they can provide diplomacy through those social medias. So the social media age system is already being used in so many levels of government, starting from sa mga city halls and then to presidential affairs and the various offices. So a lot of them already maintains a official social media account. Aside from maintaining the social media, we also have here state-funded broadcasting. So it is a type of mass communication that is under the direct or indirect financial and editorial control of a country's government. So these news organizations can be the only source of information or compete with traditional and also mga non-corporate media. So books and magazines are just confined in the library. But instead, in these times, the state-run media and are now citizen-driven outlets. So the access is very easy to all kinds of information, beginning from web to internet connectivity. So these broadcasting stations are very easy to access. In the Philippines, we have three state-owned broadcasting stations. We have PTV4, the CNN Philippines, before it is called as the RPN9, in which the government has 20% share. And the third one, we have IBC 13. So PTV4 is the People's Television Network, and IBC refers to Intercontinental Broadcasting Corporation. So these three television stations and one radio networks are currently owned by the Philippine government. The CNN Philippines is transmitted on RPN9 in the Philippines, and then it was privatized in 2011. So the Philippine government still owns 20% of the channel. In conclusion, the globalization has drastically molded the world. There is that rapid growth and development of economies and political influence emerging from globalization, and the after effect to such shows a new way to every society across the world. So there is that, as we have talked about kanina, there is that uneven and unequal opportunities among world citizens, where the rich countries become richer and the other poor countries also become poorer, economically and politically. So, that is all about Unit 2, Lesson 1, the interconnected world of states. Diba? Very, very hectic na mga topic. So, as we go on our lessons, it will only get harder. But, please bear with me, and I'm still going to see and check if you guys are still really being attentive to this content video. So, here we have our resources. And if you have any questions, of course, you can contact me through Facebook, Messenger, and through my email, Gmail. So I have here my email. There are some of you guys who have asked if we will conduct a midterms. So we will proceed with a midterm after we finish Unit 2. So I guess that is on the 3rd or 2nd week of May. So don't worry. I think it will be easy. I'll be providing you with a lot of pointers so that you will also learn what is in the midterms, what will be included in the midterms. This is why we are conducting the midterms. So this is also for you guys to redeem yourselves if ever you have low grades on your written performances sa ating mga activities. So don't worry. It will be easy. As long as you are listening to this content videos, you're watching this, and also if you're not learning through audio, you can just read them. I've been uploading them through Google Drive. So it's up to you how you will learn, which way is most easier for you to learn. So for Unit 2, Lesson 1, we do not have an activity, but I think I will be uploading a short survey on global awareness. So, keep posted na lang on our Facebook group. So, that is all for today. Thank you, and I hope you guys continue to be aware of a lot of things regarding our world, also regarding our country. I'm actually enjoying reading your responses on our activities. It's quite fun to know how you guys think of the world. It's very fun, actually. So thank you for your honest answers. And that is all for today. And I hope you have a nice day regardless. So thank you, and that's all.